Hello and welcome to the April webinar by PJLA. My name is Michael Kramer and I'm presenting to you today on behalf of Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. I'm the Calibration Program Manager at PJLA, and I appreciate y'all logging in and joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're coming from. Today's topic, as you can see, are the first two sections of 17025, section 4.1 and 4.2. We're going to group them both together here, which is impartiality and confidentiality. So as always, this webinar is being recorded. You can go and listen to the recording after this via the PJLA website. Or if you want to just obtain a copy of the slides, that can also be done as well. Just go to the webinar section of our website, and you can be instructed in how to obtain the slides, or you can go back and listen to this presentation or a wealth of other webinars we've done over the past. I certainly hope everybody can hear me. I cannot hear you all. Everybody's muted. However, feel free to utilize the question tab, and we'll go back and look at that at the end of this webinar. Please keep questions regarding today's topic, which is 4.1 and 4.2 of 17025. So we're going to start off looking at impartiality, which is the very first section in this 17025, section 4.1. I want to start out looking at definitions and hey, what are we referring to when we talk about impartiality and requirements regarding impartiality. So 17025 does define impartiality as the presence of objectivity. There's additional notes associated with that. Objectivity can be associated with conflicts of interest that do not exist and or resolved as to not adversely affect subsequent activities. Also, other terms that can be used in conjunction with impartiality would be things like freedom from conflicts of interest, freedom from bias, lack of prejudice, neutrality, fairness, open-mindedness, even-handedness, detachment, balance, or other terms that address this issue and these requirements. I like the Wikipedia definition there, which states impartiality is a principle of justice holding that decisions should be based on objective criteria rather than on the basis of bias, prejudice, or preferring the benefits to one person over another for improper reasons. In other words, just the facts. So as I stated, 4.1 is impartiality. Whole section of the standard. 4 separate clauses and various, or excuse me, 5 separate clauses and various notes related to these requirements. So it's more important now for the laboratories to show how they have handled the issue of impartiality. Hence 17025 is strongly tailored toward technical requirements. Say we got the equipment, the procedure, personnel, lab environment, and they form the foundation of 17025, and the competency of the testing, sampling, or calibration organization. You can look at it, if you think about it, impartiality is an equal critical aspect that ensures the reliability and integrity of laboratory results. If you don't have that in your, if you're not impartial with your reporting your results, I think that would be the fundamental principle that would that would reflect directly on the credibility and integrity of the testing and calibration laboratory results. So hence, stepping away from 17025 and these requirements, this is something you want to assure. I'm sure your customers want to assure that these requirements are addressed within the lab and the results are provided in an impartial manner from one customer to another. Just the facts, what's being recorded during the course of doing the calibration and testing without any outside influences over that. We're going to look at the requirements here. So this is taken right out of the standard. Very first requirement in the standard, 411, laboratory activities shall be undertaken impartially and structured in management so as to safeguard impartiality. So again, it's more important now for laboratories to show how they have handled impartiality and the issues around impartiality. The lab's responsible there. It refers to laboratory activities. So, of course, when you think of laboratory activities, you're going to think of the nuts and bolts of the folks that are doing the testing and calibration in your organization, signing off and issuing the reports, but that can include other things such as the internal auditing, procurement, or maintenance of equipment as they pertain to the laboratory activity. So want to home in there on internal auditing. So yeah, you want the internal auditor, i.e., even though it's not specified in the standard anymore, under internal auditing in that section, it can be crosswalked over here, i.e., hey, an internal auditor shouldn't be auditing their own work. Might be a impartiality issue there. Structure, dissecting this clause a little bit more. So structured and managed as to safeguard impartiality. So in other words, laboratory operations should not be influenced by other areas of the organizations that may have a different agenda, which may risk the integrity of the results produced by the laboratory. So, you know, if you're a part of a larger organization, perhaps sales, manufacturing, might have a different agenda, like we resorted to previous. The calibration testing activities is just the facts, no outside influences, particularly from other areas of the organization. There should be a clear separation of responsibility of the laboratory personnel from those personnel employed in other functions. So this should be established by the organization's identification and the reporting methods for the laboratory operations within the parent organization. So typically, if you look at an org chart where have a laboratory reporting structure, not saying it can't be done. If it would be on the organization to show that safeguards are in place. So particularly with sales, if you have a sales department, I don't want the laboratory operations reporting to sales unless there's a safeguard in place to preserve the integrity of the test or calibration results. So again, the personnel involved in laboratory activities should not engage in any activities that may conflict with their independence of judgment and the integrity in relations to the laboratory duties. In particular, they should not be engaged in design, manufacturing, supply, installation, use, or ownership of the item tested or calibrated unless safeguards are in place. Okay, next requirement under 412, the laboratory management shall be committed to impartiality. So you probably heard me say this 100 times this year, just doing webinars. Word shall is a requirement. Should is a recommendation, may is a permission. So this is a requirement. So how can you demonstrate this? This is, of course, is not an all-exclusive list of such things as having a special impartiality policy or involve a statement about impartiality in the quality policy. Discussion of impartiality on the management review, and to include the discussion in the minutes of the management review meeting. I'd like to see that, and you'll see here coming up, there is another shall about addressing risk to impartiality, and documented training and agreement by staff, including the top management on potential threats to impartiality. These could all be various ways to project objective evidence that top management is committed to impartiality. There are more than words on paper, so you can see throughout the quality management system that impartiality shall be maintained. I'd like to see how that's conveyed over to the folks in the field. They've been trained on it, understand it, and will abide by it. (413) The laboratory shall be responsible for the impartiality of its laboratory activities and shall not allow commercial, financial, or other pressures to compromise impartiality. So again, it puts the responsibility on the laboratory. So safeguards should be in place to assure these. Some things that could be utilized would be things such as having prohibitions, restrictions, disclosures, policies, procedures, practices, standards, rules, institutional arrangements, and environmental conditions. Last one there, promote an environment within your organization of open communication. If it's shown that a test or calibration are being compromised by the issue of impartiality, it should be freely addressed. As I mentioned before, perhaps a disclosure statement from to the employees could be another tool, safeguard in place where they acknowledge, hey, they don't have no other interest that could affect their ability to provide unbiased and impartial results in their testing and calibration activities. Or, depending on what type of lab you are. All right, we got the R word, risk pops up here, 414. It talks about identifying risk. So it has a requirement. You see shall there, and it talks about identifying impartiality on an ongoing basis. And then it talks about relationships. So typically you'll think about, hey, it's the relationship between us and our customers, which I admit that's typically the first thing that would come to mind, your customers. However, it could be other relationships, and there's a note at the bottom there that gives a little bit more guidance as to what are we talking about as far as relationships, or from relationships of his personnel that may jeopardize the impartiality of your testing and calibration results. These can include things such as ownership, governance, management, personnel, shared resources, finances, contracts, marketing, including branding, and payments of a sales commission or other inducements for the referral of customers, etc. These are just a few examples of possible relationships, and the risk to impartiality should be looked at. If it's identified, either avoided, mitigated to a acceptable level, or already shown that, hey, it's been presented and there is no risk. So I mentioned risk reduction or risk mitigation. So that's basically have the example of common ownership. That was one of the possible relationships. So some things that could perhaps be implemented that can reduce the risk to an acceptable level is producing a barrier showing how ownership has no influence on the results. If you have common ownership, appointees on the board or equivalent in the organization to ensure that the lab is managed in a manner to assure impartiality and ownership, does not have any decision-making influences or the outcome of laboratory results. And direct reporting, where this cannot influence the outcome of laboratory results. It's completely isolated. The outside relationship or ownership have no bearing or even aware of laboratory results, and those decisions are made strictly from the facts, the testing and calibration activities without any input from the outside ownership. Talk about identifying risk. So how about it specifies risks being done? If you go back and look at that clause right there, it says on an ongoing basis. So what are we talking about there? Is that like every day? Is it once a year, or when? To me, I look at it. If you're, of course, if you're a 3-person organization as opposed to part of a larger organization, it may have to be looked at more frequently. But if during the course of a year, I would say at least during events, new customers, or when things change within the organization, the risk to impartiality should be looked at. So impartiality should be listed. There should be a record of it that has been listed, perhaps on a risk register or whatever records you may be obtaining to show compliance to either this section or incorporated in with Section 8.5, which is actions to address risk and opportunities. Contract review should be incorporated with particularly new customers to assure that there is no risk to impartiality. Management review, internal audits, performance reviews can all provide inputs to identify any potential risk to impartiality from personnel. So it says it's an ongoing activity. It is important to identify these changes in the laboratory activity that may become a risk. Even if there are no changes in the laboratory activities, the impartiality risk analysis or whatever record that you're maintaining to show either compliance to 4.1 or 8.5, which is risk and opportunity, it should be reviewed during the management review. So if nothing changes, and if you're a small organization, if you go back, look at the section on management review, in order to assure as an ongoing basis, nothing has changed from year to year. Personnel are the same, no new ownership. Maybe you had 1 or 2 more customers, hopefully more, that you at least address it during the management review. Hey, it's been looked at again, any impartiality, and hey, there's been something identified and what was done about it, or even, hey, nothing's come up during the course of the year that would jeopardize any risk to impartiality since the last time it was looked at. So 4.1.4, if a risk to impartiality is identified, the laboratory shall be able to demonstrate how it eliminates or minimizes such risk. So you identified a risk, okay, what are we going to do about it? Is it something you can accept? Is it something you can just avoid, or can you reduce it to an acceptable level? So we have you can eliminate or reduce to an acceptable level is referred to as risk mitigation. So the laboratory should be able to show how it's handled the issue of impartiality. So these activities should be recorded. You identify the risk. Okay, has it been, if it's a high risk, if it's not acceptable, what's been done to reduce it to an acceptable level? Some examples could be, hey, change the personnel if the initial personnel are compromised. Then other parts of the laboratory perform the test if the initial part is compromised, or updating employment contracts. Or, of course, that's not an all exclusive list. Could be others. Quarantine time, mentioned here previously about receiving commissions from soliciting a new customer. So in these cases, particularly in a smaller organization, if these folks are also involved in the testing calibration activities, if an individual have received additional payment for the recruitment of a new client, then they are not permitted to be involved in the testing or calibration within 1 year of this additional payment for this client. Mentioned simple customer relationship, risk to impartiality there. Good idea to make a record of that on an ongoing basis. You have a new customer. Simple, look at the customer, I'm sorry. Simply ask yourself, make a record, does a risk to impartiality exist? If no, then we're good to go. If yes, can it be mitigated? If yes, document those results, what's been done, and can you proceed? If no, halt services to this particular customer or client until they can be mitigated to an acceptable level. So again, Section 8.5 is risks and opportunities, actions to address risk and opportunities. I just mentioned that because under 414 it specifies risk to impartiality shall be ongoing. So often, however that section is being handled within your organization, if you have a risk register, if you're doing SWOT analysis, we'd like to at least see impartiality included within the items there. And at least during the management review, if nothing has changed, that's an input item. Ongoing basis, even if nothing has changed, good idea to acknowledge nothing has changed and no additional risk has been identified, or there has been some risk identified, and then elaborate more during the input section of your management review under that section on risk. All right, that is going to conclude section 4.1 and sort of handle these two items together. So we're going to switch gears and go to section 4.2, which is confidentiality. So confidentiality can be thought of as the art of being kept secret or private. So of course, what you do within your lab, as far as you and your customers providing testing and calibration results, any information provided between yourself and your customers, hey, it needs to be confidential. So some general practices can include, hey, if you're maintaining paper copies of customers' reports or any other information related to your testing and calibration activities, sure they're locked in file cabinets. Encrypt all confidential electronic information with firewalls and password protection. This is becoming more and more challenging as we all trying to get hacked into our systems more and more these days. Folks trying to get information. It should be confidential for reasons that are not even legally acceptable. Ensure employees keep desks clear of any confidential information. And same with their computer monitor. Employees should keep their computer monitors clear of any confidential information. Shred records or documents once their retention time is over. And training, like I mentioned, I think this is something that I, as an assessor, I could read a quality system where this section is addressed. We shall maintain the confidential information of all of our customers and the results, and basically go through these requirements. But I want to see how these are conveyed to the folks out in the field, so or within the lab, the other folks that are involved in calibration activities. So good idea to perhaps provide training in this area, so create awareness. So in general, the laboratory and its personnel are responsible for the information obtained or created during the performance of laboratory activities, and all information is considered proprietary. I have trouble saying that word. And shall be recorded as confidential, with the exception to, we'll see here in a minute, what is required by law. All right, so we're going to look at the requirements under confidentiality, which is the next section in 17025, section 4.2. The laboratory shall, we're going to dissect this a little bit more, but we'll look at it in its entirety right now. The laboratory shall be responsible through legally enforcement commitments for the management of all information obtained or created during the performance of laboratory activities. The laboratory shall, two shalls right there, inform the customer in advance of the information it obtains to place in the public domain, except for information that the customer makes publicly available or when agreed between the laboratory and its customers, perhaps for the purpose of responding to complaints. All other information is considered proprietary information and shall be regarded as confidential. Well, that's a mouthful there. So laboratory is legally commits itself to keep information obtained. So we very first part there in the requirements talk about through legally enforceable commitments. So what are we talking about there? We're talking about like contractual agreements there. Also captured there, hey, you have to inform your customer in advance if the information you obtain to put in the public domain, perhaps on the website or to another source, except where the customer makes this publicly available or when agreed with the customer. This can be testimonials on the website or perhaps responding to a complaint. All other information is considered proprietary information and shall be regarded as confidential. Okay, 422. When the laboratory is required by law or authorized by contractual arrangements to release confidential information, the customer or individual concerned shall, unless prohibited by law, be notified of the information provided. So example I have here is consider that a police investigations get a court order for the lab to release test results. Legally, you must produce those results under 17025. You would be required to notify your customer that you have released the information, unless there is some regulatory statute that would prohibits you from releasing the notifying your customer that information's been released. Information obtained about the integrated from the customer. And this is, you're the lab now, so these are your customer, obtained from other sources other than the customer. Perhaps a complainant or a regulator, again, shall be confidential between the customer and the laboratory. The provider source of this shall be confidential to the laboratory and shall not be shared with the customer unless agreed to by the customer source. So let's sort of home in on that. Say a complaint, for whatever reason, you get information through a complainant in regards to one of your customers, and we have similar requirements of PJLA. So for whatever reason, we get a complaint for one of you folks are accredited by us for one of our labs. The very first question I ask, hey, do you want to remain anonymous? Of course, if they say yes, then hey, the source of this is going to be zipped up, strictly confidential, and that source will not be revealed. All right, so 424, your personnel, and this is looking at your personnel and folks that are acting on behalf of your organization, which would include things of individuals such as committee members, contractors, personnel of external bodies, which can be subcontractors, or individuals acting on the lab's behalf, shall keep confidential information obtained or created during the performance of laboratory activities, except as required by law. So that could, personnel, of course, that could be handled through see it often handled in things such as code of conduct. Read, understand, sign off on this, or non-disclosure type statements that employees will read and sign off. Mentioned before, something similar is going to have to be if you use subcontractors, for example, assure that anything they're doing on behalf of your organization is going to be confidential. If it pertains to customers of your laboratory. All right, I believe that's going to put an end to the formal presentation here. So bear with me one moment, see if we have any questions here. We have good attendance today. Thank you all for logging in. I'll give it a moment. Right now, I don't have any questions. Good afternoon. Have somebody. Good afternoon. So if why things are fresh on your mind, we covered a relatively lot of information under a short period of time. Got the right tab open here. I'll get a few in here now. A lot of these are kind of broad and encompassing. I'll do my best to answer them. They seem to be very specific to your organization. And this is live TV, so I'm reading exactly as this is typed in. If we work with companies in specific, would our confidentiality be with the company or the customer they provide the service to? Well, I think that was covered in our last slide. If they are acting on behalf of your organization, then they need to maintain the confidentiality of your customers, if I'm reading this question correctly. How can information breaches be evaluated? Or is this only by customer complaints or IT department investigation? Again, I would handle it through your corrective action process. So for whatever reason, if customer information was compromised, hey, you want to look at it. And a nonconformist has been regardless of what department it is, has been violated. So I would open up a corrective action. Do a root. Of course, you want to correct it. You want to inform those involved. and do a root. You don't want it to happen again, so you want to do a good cause analysis, and you want to assure that they are not going to repeat themselves. Put my 17025 hat. So bear in mind, that's what we're looking at this from the 17025 perspective. This next question, I have no idea. There's a lab that won't sell calibration equipment because I work with defense attorneys. Are they violating this? I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts on that? That's kind of vague. There could be other reasons behind that. I don't know if that really pertains to confidentiality or not. Quality manager can be internal auditor for audit in the technical sections. That is impartiality. I guess you're asking me if the quality manager can audit the technical sections. Depending on, of course, you want to assure that your folks are doing their testing and calibration in regards to your laboratory adopted procedures. So if they're knowledgeable enough about it and they're not involved in it, then I would say yes. Perhaps there's other folks that can assist the quality manager in that, as far as if they need any technical guidance while they're going through the technical sections of 17025. Okay, let's see, any more? In case a customer is part of an organization, internal customer, then how shall we comply with the impartiality? I used to work for a company. That's all we did was internal calibrations for our organizations. We were a Fortune 500 company. Yeah, you have to have safeguards in place. Have to ensure the reporting structure and those folks that are doing the testing and calibration activities, that safeguards is in place, and other parts within the organization has no bearing on the testing and calibration results. Mentioned in that side, they're based just on the facts. So safeguards have to be in place. Next one again. Hey, it's kind of hard for me to answer. Yeah, I know. I've been on both sides of the table here. How can you maintain impartiality in the QC lab against the pressures and challenges from manufacturing deadlines? And I'm open to anybody, putting any suggestions in here. As I said, hey, you don't want folks with different agendas have an effect over the calibration labs. So yeah, just want to do your best to have the safeguards in place. Your results are based on the facts, as I mentioned there previously, and you want to maybe express this to any folks that are putting pressure on you to get your testing or calibrations completed, or having without being fully completed, or being done according to your quality, your protocol for releasing the results. That hey, the results don't mean anything. Could have if the impartiality has been compromised during the course of carrying this out. So yeah, there's a manufacturing deadline. So best thing I can say there, hey, it cannot affect laboratory results. So whatever safeguards need to be put in place from preventing those pressures from affecting the calibration, testing, and calibration results. That's a toughie. That sounds like a specific instance or circumstances somebody must be dealing with. I know. I just thinking about that. I used to work for a place. We used to offer expedited services. At an additional cost. So folks would send in items to be calibrated if they wanted the expedited service. It's kind of similar, but we would of course have to put everything aside and get that work done. So we're taking a risk there. Hey, our results would not be compromised. We're just putting these other results to the head of the line here to get those out to these individuals because they paid for it. So, however, as far as the actual testing and in my case calibration results, that's not going to be compromised by it. It's just a policy our company had where, hey, if this service, hey, these go to the front of the line and we need to get these out first. Alrighty, that seems to be it. Good questions there. Again, hey, the slides and the presentations are available on our website. Just want to share a couple things with you folks here. I have a lot going on at PJLA. So a couple things we have here we're offering is if you're involved in the internal auditing of your organization, this might be a good thing for you folks to get involved in. We're looking at we're having 17025 overview courses. Our technical program manager, Matthew Siki, will be doing these courses. We have 2 dates set right there. So the information there is right off our website. Something that could be very beneficial, and it's virtual. So we're in a virtual world now. So it's something you can go through from the confines of your computer. And we also have, we have one other thing up here, one other event coming up this Tuesday, the 23rd, coming up. We're got under our educational series, we have a measurement uncertainties for testing labs. So register now. This is going to be April 23rd. A free live workshop. Matthew Siki will be presenting on there. There's some additional information there about what this is going to entail. Matt's a wealth of information. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of doing this. No measurement uncertainty is an area that folks struggle with. And at the end of this workshop, which is a 2-hour workshop next Tuesday, we will give certificates upon completion of this workshop. So that's going to be it for this month. Good attendance today. Appreciate everyone signing in, logging in, and I hope you found this information helpful and beneficial. And we'll see you next time.